So guys and girls, have we got a treat this morning? Chris Voss, many of you are familiar with Chris because I actually, having been involved with AREC for 7 years, Chris this year came and spoke about negotiation. And Chris, I got to tell you, I'm a hard critic because I'm exposed to training and speaking and coaches and conferences. And I have to say that for the time that you were up there, which I think was an hour, you were absolutely brilliant. The feedback we've had from the attendees, they said that this guy here, he wasn't Anthony Robbins. He didn't make us actually feel like we were going to fly to the moon, but he taught us some quality stuff. So Chris, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, man. And I love being at that conference. I really enjoyed that a lot, and so thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Okay, so Chris, for those that weren't at AREC, and just to re-familiarize those that were, your background, who are you and what you do?
Well, I was the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. I ran a negotiation strategy in all of our kidnap response operations, basically from 2000 to 2007. So I was an FBI agent for 24 years. And after I left the FBI, I started teaching these ideas into the business world. I taught at Harvard, I taught at Georgetown University, most recently at University of Southern California. And then wrote a book right behind me, Never Split the Difference, and sort of brought it all together in a book and how to apply it in business and personal life. And, it's emotional intelligence. It's intentional strategic application of emotional intelligence into whatever challenges you're faced with.
Okay, so Chris, so I can get this right and position you correct to this audience, we've got a combination of someone that is academic, teaching at university level, but we also have the combination of a person that was out, his audio matches his video. He was out doing this stuff for a big part of your life. Give me examples of the sorts of things when you're working as a negotiator for the FBI. What are the things that you'd negotiate on?
Well, you either negotiate barricaded sieges with criminals or terrorists, or you generally do international kidnappings, which is a commodities exchange. I was one of the few guys that was lucky enough to do both. I mean, I worked a number of major sieges in the United States. I negotiated a bank robbery where there were bad guys inside holding people at gunpoint in a bank, which is actually, although it happens in the movies all the time, in reality, it's a very rare event. I worked terrorism for a lot of years. I worked some terrorist sieges. And then when I got into international kidnapping, that's hard bargaining. The commodity happens to be human beings, but it's a tough negotiator on the other side that is kind of cold and hard and makes a lot of threats and makes a lot of noise and seemingly has all the leverage and how to get the upper hand.
Okay. So the people that are watching this live or watching this as a replay are all real estate agents. You've been involved with real estate, not as an agent, but you've got your girlfriend's a real estate person. You've been coaching and training real estate people in the US, particularly of recent. And what I'd love to do is to be able to use some of your best negotiation methodologies and how they're transferable to real estate. So I'd love to ask you, what are the top 5 negotiation methods that are going to be applicable to real estate agents?
Well, it's a combination of specific skills and then how you're applying the skills. So, one of the skills that we use a lot is called the label. You look, you sound, you seem. It's actually as simplistic as it sounds. It's scientifically designed to get you to think about something without you knowing that I'm getting you to think about it. It also gets you to drop your guard. Classic example is a realtor in an open house. Somebody comes through an open house, the buyer, they walk through, they're looking around. First thing you got to do is not ask them a question where the answer is going to be yes. Did you like the house? People feel trapped by yes. A hostage negotiator knows everybody can smell that trap coming. as a hostage negotiator, we actually never tried to get anybody to say yes to anything because we knew, for all intents and purposes, it's a useless answer. Now, but another common thing real estate professionals learn to ask an open-ended question. Buyer comes to our house. What did you think of the house? Well, you're going to get somewhat of an answer from that, but they're going to know they were asked a question, and they're going to know the question is going to put them at a little bit of a disadvantage because they've still got their guard up. They haven't got a relationship with you yet. What we do instead is, as simple as it is, somebody walks through the house, you say, wow, it looks like you saw some really interesting things. Now that's using a label and a read of their body language. And most of my realtors that we're coaching and teaching negotiation have described that as unlocking the floodgates of truth telling. Now that intentionally designed sentence, it looks like you saw some stuff, actually kind of bypasses their cognitive thought and taps into their stream of consciousness. And what people normally say is they'll go like, yeah, well, I saw this in the house and we were thinking about this and then I noticed this, and it taps right into their stream of consciousness and kind of fast tracks it to their brain. And people without realizing it are suddenly telling you what's on their mind. That's what a hostage negotiator needed to get a bad guy to do. I need him to tell me what's on his mind without him knowing that I've gotten him to do that. And that's just a quick example of how you use a label cold read in an open house to suddenly get a potential client gushing about what they saw.
I love that because, in real estate school, Chris, it's funny. I don't know whether it's just been one trainer that's passed it on to another trainer, passed on to another trainer. There's always this perception, you can control the dialogue by the questions. You got to make them say yes. But what you're saying is that's not quite right. What you're saying is people know when these games are being played.
Oh, they're sick of it. People are so sick of it. There are a lot of people that I've coached who suddenly said, now I understand why things seem to go really good at the beginning, and then people stop talking to me. Because this whole yes mode thing, is a bit of a logic trap.
Yeah.
And people get walked into it 2 or 3 times, and then they know to be leery of it, and they'll stop talking to you entirely. It's why sometimes that people have trouble getting phone calls returned, people have trouble getting emails returned. If the other side's gone dead silent on you and you're wondering why, it's most likely that they've gotten uneasy with the whole yes mentality, the yes mode, the yes trap, and they just don't want to talk to you anymore.
Okay, so I love that. Can you repeat that question again? At an open house, when they come back, what was it beautiful? You eloquently said it beautifully. Can you say it again?
Well, you say, hey, look, it seems like you saw some stuff you were really interested in. Or it looks like you saw stuff in the house you were interested in. It's just a label. Beautiful. And people just start going like, they'll say, yeah, well, I saw this and I saw this. It literally had one agent here in Southern California describe it as unlocking the floodgates of truth telling. They don't even ask questions in open house anymore. They just use labels.
Okay, love it. Let's other stuff, gold like that. Love that stuff. Good content already. We've only been going, 5-10 minutes, and we've been exposed to new content. Other things that are on your mind about real estate agents and negotiation?
Well, another crazy one is, I don't know if you guys do door knocking that much.
Yes, we do.
There's a lot of door knocking going on in a real estate agent here. A hostage negotiator, I know that what's more important than whether I know your name, it's whether or not you know my name.
Yeah.
Now, you knock on somebody's door, most people launch into their sales pitch. They try to get to the point when, in fact, the person who's answered that door, they don't know who you are. And I've got someone that has tripled their responses on their door knocking by starting out by saying like, hi, I'm Chris. First thing out of their mouth, because somebody opened, most people say, hey, I'm with this agency. I'd like to talk to you. Do you know the value of your home? A lot of salespeople want to get to the point of the pitch as fast as they can. And unfortunately, the person they're talking to doesn't even know who they are.
Right.
And and they feel, and because of that, for a variety of reasons, they feel out of control. So the very first question is, hi, I'm Chris. It's that simple. Not what agency you're from, not, none of the rest of the stuff, because that becomes noise. Suddenly you're like, okay, Chris, so what's this about? The very next question has to be, which mostly a no-oriented question, but have I caught you in the middle of something? That question immediately puts the person back in control, because they can say yes or no, but they're gonna, whether they say yes or no, they're gonna say, but what's this about? Now, not only do they know who you are, but they've just given you permission to tell them what it's about. They've asked, they want to know. Now the clock's still ticking on you a little bit, but you're now conditioning them for all your future interactions. The next thing you got to condition them for is you never want them to be anxious about time. So if you got a 3 to 5 minute pitch you want to make, you say, this is going to take 7 minutes. You begin to condition them that you will always take less time than what you asked for. The last impression is the last impression. You're always setting up the next conversation. I never want you to be distracted by anxiety over how long this is going to take. And I want you to always feel in control, which also means you're not going to be distracted by anxiety, which means you're going to listen to everything I say. And so I'm going to say, look, I need 7 minutes of your time, then I'm out of here. 5 minutes, no oriented questions instead of yes oriented. The other crazy thing, it's insane, and I still can't completely explain this, as concerned as people are about saying yes, people will say no to anything with no problem.
Right.
No problem. Because they feel protected. There's no commitment whatsoever in no. So a great starter is to say, is it a ridiculous idea to think that you'd want to know the value of your home and how you may be able to leverage it to get the home of your hopes and dreams?
Love it. Is it a ridiculous idea to get an idea on the value of your home and whatever the dialogue you used in there, but is it a ridiculous idea? Love it. Love it.
Right. And that question, a quick story, which I think I told us at the conference. I mean, I approached Jack Welch, who's a famous rock star businessman in the United States, at a book signing. And I wanted to pitch him to come and speak to the class I'm teaching at USC. Now, everybody asked Jack Welch to come and do something. He is the most famous, one of the most famous American businessmen ever. He's one of the top 5. Got multiple books out there. Like if you're a CEO, if you're in international business, you know who Jack Welch is. So I just walk up to him and I say, is it a ridiculous idea for you to come and speak at the class I teach at USC? And he looked up and to the left, and he got this really, really stern look on his face. And initially I get scared that, number one, he's furious, and number two, that he's an old guy. So I was afraid I gave him a stroke and he was going to die right in front of me. I thought he was going to fall over dead. And he just stared and stared. And then he looks back at me and he says, this is my personal assistant's name. This is a special Twitter account we have set up for her. I think we're going to be in Los Angeles in the fall. I'm going to reach out for her and tell her what you want. If we're in Los Angeles and it fits in the schedule, I'll come in and talk to your class. Because the mere act of saying no makes people feel so protected. They're actually able to think through stuff really, really fast. And since they don't know that you made them feel that good,
yeah,
they're inclined to talk with you.
Okay, that's gold. Chris, can I ask you, I mean, one of the things I noticed, can I just say, in real estate in Australia and New Zealand, sometimes the conversations you've got to have with a client, wow.
My assistant wants my attention right now.
Yeah. Chris, when a real estate agent, a girl or guy, loses a sale and they've got to get on the phone and tell the owner that they've got bad news. Like, I'd love to know, like, in the world of FBI negotiation, there must be times when you had a client that you had bad news for him or no news.
All right, so there's two things here. That's a great question. The first thing you got to do is everybody, when they call with bad news, they want to start out by saying, "How are you today?" Now, this is really well-intentioned, but it's really a bad thing to start out with, because that's the other person is going to be like, whenever they call me and they got good news, they call and they say, "Hey, I got great news." So you've started to make somebody anxious without worrying about it, without intending to. The absolute best way to deliver bad news is to call on the phone and say, "I got bad news." Hesitate for half a second and then deliver the news. You might even want to say, "Look, I got heartbreaking news." You want to characterize the news as worse than what it actually is, so that ultimately, when whatever you have to say is a relief instead of worse.
Right.
Hostage negotiators, there's a couple things we learned that in the 70s that actually the brain science backs up now. We're overly negative. The caveman brain is overly negative. So if at certain points in time, I know I can take advantage of that because I want my bad news to be a relief, or I want it to at least be no worse than what you've imagined. Now, if I say, "How are you doing today?" some of my tone of voice is going to start making you uneasy, and you're going to wonder where I'm going with this. You're beating around the bush. Actually, the way I learned this the very best was I worked a case once that we were enormously personally invested in the case, 13 months. And at the end of 13 months, some of our hostages, two of our hostages were killed in a friendly fire rescue attempt. Negotiator that called me 5:30 in the morning on the phone, he said, "I got bad news." He named the hostage. He says, "The hostage is dead." And I remember when I went through that, I felt so good that he gave me a chance to brace myself with bad news. He didn't waste any time. It was basically like, brace yourself, bad news is coming, hesitation, and then hit me with it immediately. Didn't make me wait for it. And that quick sequence made me deal with it extremely fast. And I ended up calling about probably literally 20 other people, family members, government officials that had put their heart and soul into the case, and said, "I got bad news. The hostage was killed." And every single person I briefed appreciated that I handled it exactly like that.
Right. So Chris, it's really interesting because I think, firstly, real estate agents, or realtors as you call them in the US, have got a tendency that they want to be liked by people. Some people have got an exaggerated addiction to be liked. Is that your own? It says Voss on there. Is that your own? You're not into books. You do drinks too, or is that just your drink bottle?
It's my, I drink Voss water. I keep trying to convince them that I'm a long lost relative and I should own some stock, but I haven't gotten to that point yet.
So Chris, real estate agents have to regularly give bad news. And I think that one of the things that they do is they get on the phone and they go softly at the start. And they don't get to the meat of the problem. What you're saying is get into it nice and early and position it in a worse way than what it is, because the outcome will be better. That's what you're saying.
Right. And, there's what you talk about is a matter of degree. I mean, you should soften a blow before you deliver the blow.
Right.
You just shouldn't try to soften it for 10 minutes. You're torturing people when you're doing that.
Right.
People's brains work remarkably fast. There's a lot of resilience. So let's harness the resilience. And it's literally, if I got bad news, I've got bad news. Bang. And then hit them with it. Let people brace themselves. They appreciate the warning.
Yeah.
They just don't want the warning to linger.
Okay. Chris, how do you finish the conversation when you've had bad news and you've had to, hypothetically, when you're doing your FBI negotiation work, How do you get straight, you get into it, you describe the problem, and how do you finish it?
All right. Well, some of it is going to be a function of how you walked up to it, and how we walked up to all situations was, there's a possibility that things could go bad. So we're gonna be giving people situational assessments all along the way. We don't want anybody to be caught off guard on the possibilities.
Yeah.
We say, here's the situation, here's a roller coaster we could potentially be on. Here are the indicators that we could see coming that would make changes. It doesn't take that long to do, summary assessment recommendations. Given summary and assessment all along, we should do this verbally to commanders in the midst of crisis situations. So you can always find time to do this. When you deliver the bad news, then you say, all right, so we saw this was a possibility. We knew there were indicators that could cause this to happen. Now, I've got a game plan based on where we are now. But before we get into this game plan, what am I missing? What do you think I've left out? You probably feel some doubt. You probably feel some disappointment. That's actually some specifically intentioned designed. If you're delivering bad news to somebody, they're going to feel doubt and disappointment. I know that I'm going back to my labels, and I know that label reaches in and dials it down, keeps a clear head. I don't have to be a genius to know that somebody's going to be disappointed and have doubts over bad news. So I'm going to inoculate and preempt it. So I'm going to say, you probably got some doubts. You're probably disappointed. You're probably second guessing what's going on here. Now, I've got some very specific recommendations. But before I get into those recommendations, what do you think I'm missing? What do you think I'm leaving out? Let the other side feel back in charge. They're now involved in a process. They now feel in control. Secret to gaining the upper hand in a negotiation is giving the other side the illusion of control. You got your client dialed back in with you. They feel vested. They feel now they're back part of the team again. They feel like at any given point in time, I can send us in another direction. And you need to get them reinvested with you. Then when you give your recommendations, since they feel like that they could change them at any time, if your recommendation makes sense, they go like, all right, I like, that makes sense to me. I like where you're going. Carry on. And that's the way you keep going as fast as you possibly can.
Chris, you talked about at AREC predictability. Elaborate more about that.
Well, there's a certain read of the situation, emotional reaction, that either based on what the person's given you or the circumstances, the reactions are eminently predictable. So whatever real estate aspect of the real estate business you're in, you know about how long it's going to take to get a sale, how many people through the house, and you got a rough feel for the velocity and the dynamics of your marketplace. So you start to lay this out for your client, your potential client. What seems like a real basic, what in college class, the introductory class was 101, real estate 101. What seems like a 101 understanding of the industry to you is actually probably pretty insightful to your clients. You start laying this out, and then the things that you have predicted, once they start happening, you look like a clairvoyant. Right. I mean, you look like, and which just raises their trust level in you. Well, you said this was a possibility, and it came true. Wow, you really know what you're doing. I mean, even some of the most basic and fundamental things. If you've got 10 minutes in the real estate business, you've probably got more insight to what's going on than any of your clients do. If the amount of effort that you went through to pass the test, to even be allowed, you got insights into the industry that your clients don't have. Just start calling it out in advance because it's predictable to you. To them, it looks like clairvoyance, amazing insight.
Okay. Chris, in a moment, we're going to do a couple of role plays, but I'd love to finish off a little bit, and you tell me, what are some other key strategies that you reckon great negotiators have relevant to real estate?
Stephen Covey advice from way back when was seek first to understand, then be understood. Like a great negotiator, I know it's just going to take me a few more moments to summarize for you how you see things, because that opens up your mind to what I have to say. Seek first to understand, then be understood. So I'll say, all right, this is what you're looking at. This is how you feel about it. You're a little confused by this. You're feeling uncertainty. You think your home is worth a lot, but you know that it's an uncertain marketplace. You don't know if the time of year is going to affect the sales. You don't know if there's going to be a change in the stock market. You don't know if the U.S. is going to go to war with North Korea and nobody's going to buy houses as a result of that. There are all sorts of uncertainties in the market. And the person you say that to says, wow, you understand me. What else have you got to say? And now they're dialed into what you're going to say. So a good negotiator is going to try to articulate the other side's point of view just because I know it's going to clear all the noise in your head and now you're going to listen to me.
Right. Okay. Chris, some of the obvious things that you notice about bad negotiators, what are the things that come to your mind?
The yes addiction is the worst.
Right.
I mean, I want to get you in the yes mode. I'm going to only ask questions where the answer is yes. And somehow you're not going to notice.
Yeah.
And then, I see a lot of people, this yes mode mentality, but not only that, a sales manager in a company was recently saying like, you feel under a lot of time pressure to get to the point. I mean, you want to get to the point before the other side hangs up the phone. Well, that's why they want to hang up the phone, because there are other things that are bothering them. Like, I don't even know you and you're trying to sell me.
Yeah.
We don't even have a relationship and you're working so hard to get to the point and you're bashing me with my name. Like, you call me on the phone, you called me, and then you're going to say, may I speak to Chris Voss, please? Right. First of all, you suspected I was going to be on the phone. Secondly, nobody that I know calls me and says, may I speak to Chris Voss? So I already know you're a salesman, and I already know you're going to try to hide from me that you want to sell me something. You're going to try and hide that from me as long as you can, because as soon as I figure out you're selling me, I'm going to hang up. And so instead, you're like, look, if I like talking to you, maybe I'm willing to be sold by you. If I know who you are, if I see the slightest inclination that you're going to listen to me, since nobody else does, I'm probably going to stay in a conversation with you longer because everybody else is trying to trap me with yes.
Love it. Chris, I'm sure I saw a slide at AREC that said it's not win-win and you had something else on there, like you don't believe win-win. And then I'd like to talk to you about, talk to me about that. You don't think win-win's the answer?
People, win-win is one of two things. I mean, if I'm using the term win-win early in the conversation, I have never had anybody bring win-win up early who wasn't trying to cut my throat. Off the bat. And I'll be training negotiation someplace, and some executive from the company who's not in the training will corner me at lunch and say, I practice win-win all the time. How have you got a problem with that? And I'll say, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you mean? And every single time that person is a cutthroat, high anchor, extreme offer person, and win-win is a disguise because they're going to say, let's win-win. Let's meet in the middle. The person who says that to you just is moving the goalposts. The old saying, the person who wants to meet you in the middle is usually a poor judge of distance.
Yeah.
It's a con.
Well, Chris, that I can't help looking at the book behind you. Never split the difference. Never split the difference. What's it mean?
Splitting the difference is usually what people do when they're tired and they're lazy and they just don't want to work themselves all the way through the negotiation. And the real problem with that is you're leaving out a lot of important stuff. You think you have a deal and you really don't. I mean, you've got, depending upon the type of business negotiation, like in real estate, there's always sub-terms that are going to change everything. What inspections are required? When are you going to close? Is it a mortgage? Is it all cash? Does the seller, can they get out now? Do they need to stay in a house 6 months? How soon do you want to take possession? I mean, there's a million things that are going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect whether or not the sale is going to go through, because, you know, real estate people are more sensitive, I think, than any other profession, that the gap between agreement and close is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, deals fall apart after they've been signed in real estate all the time.
Yeah.
They, in Southern Cal, especially like Southern California is a hot real estate market, which makes sellers extremely difficult to deal with because they know it's a hot market. They can't imagine that the deal is going to fall apart after they get a deal on a price. And they fall apart all the time. You know, the business world, people start counting their commissions as soon as the deal is signed. And real estate people learn the hard way, you know, just because we got a deal doesn't mean this thing is going to close.
Yeah.
And so if you have problems over closure, it ain't over price.
Yeah.
Because you thought you had an agreement when you agreed on price and you left a whole bunch of stuff out. And now the real negotiation really begins. So if you anticipate that in the initial negotiation, you know, I believe there's a 7-to-1 rate of return. And every extra minute spent of anticipating problems saves you 7 minutes of fixing them.
Right.
Now that translates into how soon you close or whether or not you close at all.
Right.
Because you let a seller think that because we agreed on price that deal is going to close. And then you come back in a secondary negotiation asking them to fix things because they get problems in the house. I mean, you try to get a seller in a hot market to fix things they're obligated to sell. They just say to themselves, well, we'll just put it back on the market because we had 7 people bidding before. I'll just sell to somebody else.
Yeah.
And you can't say to them no because every single buyer is going to have the same problem, which is logical, but the seller's emotional. And they're not going to buy into that if you can't tell people stuff logically. So splitting the difference makes you vulnerable to missing the more important things that are going to kill your deal.
Got you. So don't get focused just on price. Think about terms and preempt all the other issues that you know from the past come up. So Chris, a lot of the people watching this video are young girls and guys that go up against experienced real estate agents to win the business, to get a listing and be given instructions to sell the property, and they're pitching for business. What's any negotiation tips you can give to the girl or guy competing against a more experienced campaigner?
Well, you know, the more experienced campaigner is highly vulnerable because they're going to come in and they're going to try to win the day based solely on how calm they are.
Yeah. And
how long their resume is. So, quick example. I'm working a kidnapping in Haiti by phone. Father kidnapped victims, a 12-year-old boy. Father's told the FBI is going to help him. I think he expects the FBI to show up at his door, like jumping out of helicopters and parachuting into his backyard. I don't know what he thinks. He gets a call from me in Washington, D.C., and he literally says to me on the phone, "You're in Washington, D.C., how are you going to help me?" I figure I got 3 to 5 seconds before he hangs up. So all I do is I say, all right, so Haitian kidnappers are not killing kidnap victims these days, which is really stupid because they kill each other all the time. But they don't kill kidnap victims. Now, today's Thursday, and Haitian kidnappers love to party on Saturday night. If you follow my guidance, we'll have your son out late Friday, early Saturday morning. He says, tell me what you want me to do. Now, what I did was describe to him what he was faced with and offer the slightest insight into what he was faced with. He never asked me my resume. I never told him. He never asked me how many times I've been to Haiti, how many kidnappings in Haiti I worked. I worked about 100, but I've never been to Haiti. Right. Not one resume question. As soon as I demonstrated to him that I saw what he looked at. You're a new real estate agent. You roll in, somebody questions your credentials. What they're really wondering is, do you know what I'm faced with? Right. All of that goes away as soon as you're saying, all right, this is what's going on in your market today. Homes go on, and then you start laying out any sort of insight and information into the market, which you got when you took the class. let alone in the information that you gathered while you were there. You begin to lay out an understanding not only of what they're faced with and offer them the slightest bit of insight, the simplest piece of information, and say, you know, right now I know you're worried about what's the best price for your home. I know you're worried about how you got to get your home prepared. And I know you're wondering what happens when sales break down between signing the agreement and never close. So you're looking for a professional that understands how to navigate these issues for you with the minimum of fuss so that you're not laying awake at night wondering whether or not your house is going to sell. And then shut up, because your client is going to look at you and say, this guy or gal knows what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
What the Haiti father said to me after I laid out in 10 seconds what he was faced with, he said, tell me what you want me to do. And that's how you get your potential client to look you in the eye and say, tell me what we need to do, as soon as you've laid out to them that you understand the market.
Okay, guys and girls, that is absolutely gold. And I just want everyone to understand that Chris basically said there, he did not spend any time giving people his autobiography. He didn't go off and tell people, this is my CV. He basically said, I see the world as you see it. And they connected straight away. They didn't then, you know, in any way question what you were going to say, because they thought, he gets it. He gets it. Now you've got their attention. Love it, love it, love it. Can I ask Chris, on that issue, are people born like that, or can they learn that?
All right, we're all born with the capacity. And the great thing about, you know, this, well, let's call it emotional intelligence. Like, our capacity to build our emotional intelligence is nearly limitless. All we got to do is go after it. I mean, it's not, your IQ's fixed. Like, no matter how many chess games you play or how many times you spin that stupid Rubik's Cube around, your IQ, like your height, ain't going to change. I can drink all the milk I wanted. When I was a kid, I wanted to be 6'7" tall and be a professional basketball player. And I drank a lot of milk and I didn't get there. But you can build your emotional intelligence. And, you know, one of the guys that I think is a classic example of it, because I'm reading it in an interview of Warren Buffett, who's on the cover, I think, this month of Forbes magazine, is one of the 100 great living business minds of the century. And he's 87. And Warren Buffett is building his emotional intelligence every single day. That's why he's such a great investor. And how many guys are that wealthy and that beloved worldwide without him understanding how to handle people?
Okay. Look, in a moment, I'm going to touch on something that may be of use to these people watching this that can help them improve. We're going to do one final role play tip in getting a buyer up. Every buyer offers lower than what they, than what the owner wants and what the agent is hoping that they offer. Is there any tip that you can give us, a buyer offering less and getting a buyer up?
Yeah, that's the process of getting somebody to bid against themselves.
Yeah.
Now, the way you do that is just like a relentless application of empathy and then say no really gently.
Yeah.
What it boils down to is like,
it's given you a test drive of Real Estate Gym. Let me tell you, if you're a subscriber and a member of the gym, you'll be getting videos from our co-coaches all the time. You'll be getting mentors, you'll be getting scripts, you'll be getting dialogues, you'll be getting templates, and most importantly, My Prospector, your personal accountability system to make more calls, get more appointments, get more listings. From around $10 per week, realestategym.com.au, your personal coach.